All right, so, hi, my name is Paul Rollinson. I'm from Waukesha, Ontario. There's certain things I've been told to say, and that's one of them. And the other thing I need to say before I start is that Susie asked me to do some storytelling for her for the Steampunk Festival this year. And she said that she'd like some ghost stories. And I sort of thought about ghost stories. Now, how the heck? I mean, I have lots of ghost stories in my repertoire, but I usually use ghost stories if I'm, it's at night and there's either a group or kids and there's a campfire and there's something scary going on. But I had a lot of trouble thinking about, well, how, if I'm just going to be sitting around in a fairly non-active site, not a lot of texture to it, not a lot of ambience to it, how is a ghost story going to work on a video? And I sort of thought, well, you know what, I just don't think it's going to work. I think I'm going to have to come up with something that would work in this sort of situation. Now, I should say, however, if you want a steampunk ghost story, then I would suggest that you go to this book, which is called just plain Steampunk, and check out the Ghost of the Wemlick Manor. Now, that's Welsh, and I'm sure that my pronunciation is wrong, by Delia Sherman. It's only about 30 pages, 35 pages. Nice little steampunk-oriented ghost story that you can read on your own at some point. So consider this to be the ghost story that I could have read, but it would have been really boring to be read to you. You should be reading it yourself in bed in a dark room. All right. Having said that, I started to think about what I should be doing for ghosts, and I thought, well, there's a lot of spirit to the Steampunk Festival. Everybody who comes seems to really enjoy it when they're dressed up and steampunkish, and all those who are just fairly straight and just have come to watch and see what goes on in this particular festival. And it's a great festival, trust me. So I thought I would focus on the spirit of steampunk, or the spirits that might be involved in this area. And when I started to think about that, I started to think about, well, where would the first spirits from this area be? What would they represent? All of the things that come with talking about spirits. So I started to think about the paths, the dirt paths that connected the villages back in the 17th century and for thousands of years before that. Because walking between where you lived was what had to be done. There was no question of driving or taking a stagecoach. Walking is what had to be done. So there is a thing these days that I can call it in the native language, and I'm just, if I mispronounce this, I apologize, but it's called the McCanns. And the McCanns in the Anishinaabe language basically means the path or the way. And there was a path and a way between all of the villages all over Simcoe County and south of here. So the McCanns, there was a path, a track between Coldwater and Orillia, but this was only part of the bigger McCanns that the native population would have walked so that they could visit and interact with other members of their tribes. All of them being different in one way or another, because there's a number of tribes. And the tribes that lived in this area at that point were the Wendat people. And again, if I was mispronounced, I apologize, but the Wendat. And basically, the Wendat means dwellers of the islands. And just because there were it was a lot more marshy in those days, sort of communities were in some ways a little more isolated. And so they actually, in terms of islands, there were probably islands inland as well as all of the islands that were in Georgian Bay. So thinking about the spirits and thinking about a story to tell, I remembered that having worked at Ste. Marie among the Hurons, which is at the time between 1639 and 1649, was the earliest inland settlement in North America. And Ste. Marie among the Hurons basically was at the center. It was set up by the Jesuits for their purposes, and I don't want to get into all the politics of what that was, both religious and general. But in terms of where Ste. Marie was built, it was sort of built in the center of all of these McCanns, these trails that went all the way over to La Fontaine and all the way over to Aurelia, certainly from there, and even south down towards Toronto. So, because I worked at Ste. Marie, which is a great place, and everybody should go and visit it. It's really well done. I did some part-time work there from time to time. And it was a great place to work. The guys and the gals that worked there were wonderful people. But everybody always sort of talked about a ghost here and a ghost there. And I started to, in terms of how I feel about ghosts, I'm not sure I actually believe in ghosts. I'm not sure. However, having had a real life experience, perhaps, with a ghost, this is where I can almost become a believer. See, I kind of think that the world actually there's a lot of layers in this particular world of ours, all right? And, dogs can hear sounds that we can't hear. And they can probably smell things that we can't smell. Scientists say that there are particles that pass right through our bodies. There are animals that are way more sensitive in terms of touching. In terms of the visual light we can see, we're missing a lot of light on both ends of the scale. So, if we live in a world of layers of sensations, why couldn't there be a spirit? Why couldn't there be a ghost? So, having said that, and knowing now that I'm pretty skeptical about ghosts, other than this experience, here's how it went. When we were at Ste. Marie working, there was lots of possibilities for ghosts. There was lots of spirits. There was lots. The Jesuits were on a mission. They had a job to do. The native people had their own spiritual world, which they believed in. So there was a bit of a push and pull in their world about that. And at Ste. Marie, there is a Jesuit residence, and this is a residence that contained a chapel, a refectory where they ate, and then just a residence where they would sleep and then perhaps share stories after they had traveled the McCanns to the various villages all over Simcoe County when they got back. So I was told by some of the staff, I think there's a ghost. We've heard sounds. We've heard sounds in the residence, And I thought, I've heard sounds. Okay. So I thought, one day, I'm going to just check this out. I'm just going to go into the residence. And I did. I went out and I actually, in the dark, I sat in the Jesuit residence in an evening. And you know what? I heard sounds. I truly heard some sounds. But it turns out that those sounds were raccoons in the walls. And when I told a lot of these people that, I don't think so, there's raccoons in the walls, you guys are just pushing the envelope on this whole idea about ghosts in the residence. I mean, it would be a good place to have a ghost, really, in the residence. However, over the course of my time at Ste. Marie, there were a number of movie shoots that cropped up, and I was fortunate enough to be able to be a part of them. And we were doing a movie shoot that really related to Jean de Brebeuf, who was probably, if anybody has heard of any of the martyred saints, he's the one that stands out, is Jean. And he is a saint. he stands out in a number of ways. I mean, his native name was Ekon, which basically means, and again, I apologize for any mispronunciation of that Wendat name, Ekon, E accent C-H-O-N, which basically means he who carries the load. And that kind of sums up who Jean was, because he was a very big man. He was over 6 feet tall. And he could carry his load at the portages. And there were a lot of portages between Quebec and Ste. Marie. It's a 30-day trip and a lot of portages. And the native people respected someone who could carry their weight and make sure that they weren't a burden, an extra burden on that long trip from Quebec to Ste. Marie in Midland and back in those days. So he was respected in that way. In some ways he wasn't respected, but certainly the name implies that he would carry his load, and I think he carried his load religiously as well. So there was this movie shoot, I guess about 30 years ago, 35 years ago or so. And I don't, to be honest with you, I don't remember the name of the movie. I don't remember the name of the director. It was a fairly low budget kind of thing, and that was fine. It was still something that I could do quite nicely and do a good job in it. So that's why I ended up doing it. Well, anyway, we were in that movie, and of course, and I remember that I was representing a Donné, or one of the workers that would have been working at Ste. Marie. And there were a couple of other guys that were also representing the Donnés, and we were pushing things in the snow with big sleds, because sleds, you know, they didn't have skidoos, and they didn't have a lot of things to make life easy. They had these wooden sleds. So we were pushing these sleds around in the bush, and we had to take a break. At one point, we had to take a break and decided to go to the Church of Saint Joseph for our break between doing another segment in the movie. Now, the Church of Saint Joseph is one of the most sacred places at the site. It's where the body of Jean de Brébeuf was buried after he was martyred. And so, if there ever were a place for there to be spirits, that would probably be the place, but I never thought about that too much. And his body was actually exhumed after he was brought back to Ste. Marie. His bones, his body was his skin and the flesh were put in the grave, and his bones were taken and are treasured as religious artifacts these days. And there's parts of Jean in various churches all over the world. So we were in the Church of Saint Joseph. Probably the most important spot for Jean de Brébeuf, Ekon, on the site. That's where the natives came to hear what the French Jesuits had to say, and so we're in the church, and we're just sitting around, just relaxing a little bit and talking about this and talking about that, and you know what was going on. And one of the I don't know, director or the photographer who was working the camera took a picture of us sitting in the church, and that was fine. That was cool, and we finished that, and we kind of went off and finished off the rest of our particular part of the movie. But after the movie was shot, the director sent a number of us, and there were a lot of us, something really peculiar. And what he said us was, and I'm going to just hold it up for the camera, but you'll have a better shot of it because we've got a close-up. But this is what you're probably going to see when you take a look at what was happening in the church. If you look at that photograph, you will see myself sitting on the left-hand side, one of the other actors on the right-hand side, and then in the middle there is this white sort of wispy kind of shape. Now, if you want to use your imagination, you could really say that whoever is in that shape had some sort of robe on. That particular shape, in that particular way, in this picture, is looking at or very close to the gravesite of Jean de Brébeuf. As I say, I was sent this off the cuff by the director. Nobody has seen this picture before, other than a small number of people. I distributed took some colored photocopies, gave them to some friends and some people who actually do some scholarly work with regard to Sainte Marie among the Hurons. And all we can do is sort of think, well, the shape is fairly large compared to us. It must have been a tall person. I can also say, honestly, there was no smoke in the fireplace. We just came in out of the cold, sat there for a bit, and got out again because it takes too long in that church to heat it up, to sit there and feel comfortable for any given length of time. So there's no smoke, no fire in the fireplace. And the shape itself kind of towers above, or just, it looks to be a large shape, a large misty shape. Is it Jean de Brébeuf? I don't know. But in terms of something odd that would make me think about spirit and levels and layers and where important things in people's lives may have happened or where they actually lived, if the layers are that close, all the sounds and the shapes and the memories and all that is that close, maybe accidentally we did catch something in the church at that moment that was actually there. And that's my ghost story. If you need some more information about the Wendat and this area in the 17th century, because that will be the only really old tale that I can tell honestly. I'm hoping to have a friend of mine come onto the program in the next few weeks, and we can talk about the ghosts of the McCanns and what would have been talked about, what would have been thought about, what would have gone on the trail a long time ago. But a good historical reference is this book by Conrad Heidenreich called Huronia. It's out of print, but it's a really, really good book on the Wendat people, the people who first lived here. So at that point, I think I can say we'll see you again. I can't remember what Susie asked me to tell everybody at the end of the show. What was that?
An undisclosed location.
We will be at an undisclosed location next week with another spirit story. Thanks so much.